Afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Europass Talks with Susan Galliano, where we talk to educators and people from all over the globe to talk about the topics that we're all interested in education. Before we begin, I'd like to ask you to please click on the subscribe button and join us. We will be doing these talks every 2 weeks for the remainder of this school year. And today we're going to talk about a topic that is a very hot one in schools today. And we're going to talk about parent-teacher collaboration. Today I am going to have a guest, and he is an expert on how to help parents and teachers get along a lot better. As a matter of fact, he is an educator and a trainer at our Europass Center in Copenhagen. And his career has spanned from Australia to South Africa to Germany. And he is passionate about well-being and about, he not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk on how to create a school community where every member of the community can thrive. And so I'd like to bring on Nick Praulins.
Hello, Susan.
Hello, Nick. Thank you so much for being with me here today.
Thank you for having me.
There are so many things that you can share with us and topics that, in my experience with teacher training at Europass, I know is this is one of the topics that teachers struggle with the most, starting from preschool, primary, secondary school. It's a topic that comes up a lot. And I thought, who better than you with the experience that you've had, and also one of the courses that you facilitate for us at Europass, the New Teacher Essentials. Well, that's one, New Teacher Essentials, about building confidence and professional skills. And then also the course on parent-teacher collaborations, building bridges, building success. And so I said, I have to talk to this man.
Brilliant.
Yes. And so would you like to tell us a little bit about how is it that you have wound up in our network? What has brought you here? And what is it that, some of your experience in education up until now?
Wow. Okay. Well, let's see. I started my career as a primary school teacher back in Adelaide, in Australia, in about 2005, I think. That was my first experience in the classroom. And I was teaching at this school called Christian Brothers College in Adelaide. I had a class, if you can imagine this, of 40 grade 6 boys. 40. 40. That's quite large by any standard, and that was a lot for a beginning teacher to kind of navigate. That really, I really got my teeth cut, really quickly in that situation, so to say. Then after that, I moved to Melbourne and I taught at an amazing school called St. Michael's Grammar. And that was really the school where I first experienced the true importance of community. What does it mean to intentionally create a school that has a really rich and thriving community? It's not just about the children who are the absolute center of everything we do, but it's also about the teachers and the parents and the school community. How can we involve everyone to support the well-being and academic success of the child? It was also there that I first found out about the Reggio Emilia approach, which is not so far away from where you are right now.
Not at all.
Not
at all. About an hour and 20 minutes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I'd never heard of the village of Reggio Emilia before I'd heard of this concept, and it just seemed so fascinating to me. But the thing that I took away from it at St. Michael's was the importance of the idea that it does take a village to raise a child, and it does take the input of everyone in the community in order to help that school community to thrive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also want,
Um,
I have to congratulate you though, that after that first experience of 40 kids in a classroom, that you
I
actually,
stuck with it.
you decided, you stuck with it. That's right. You didn't decide to go
Yeah.
off and get some corporate job.
Crazy times. I mean, I think back on that now, and like, I don't know how I'd approach that now. I don't think that that's a thing anymore in the world of education,
Yes,
thankfully. But it was at the time.
that's right. That's
Uh,
right. And hopefully it taught you a lot about school leadership.
it taught
Mm.
me, a lot. I would say mostly about behavior management. So if anyone needs tips about that,
Yeah. Yes. And so
honestly,
what
I
do
don't.
you, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say that yes, the classroom management tips everyone needs.
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone, even when you are. I have teachers who have been teaching for decades, and it's in some way though it's never the same because
no,
the students are never the same.
it's always
And
evolving. The way we approach them, the struggles that they have as children are evolving and change as time goes on, and we need to be adaptive in our responses. The way that we once thought about behavior management has just evolved so much because our children's needs are so different now, and we must continue to be open and involved. But we digress. That's not what we're here to talk about.
but that is connected to what we're going to talk
But it
about
is
because
so connected. You're so right.
yes, because if you think about how parenting is today and how
Mm,
parents feel even in their role as parents,
yeah.
what is the even the reason for having children,
Mm,
the way that parents are looking at what it is that they're supposed to be giving their
yeah.
children in life,
Yeah.
and I wanted to ask you what is it in your experience about the relationship between, let's say, parents or families or caregivers, guardians
Mm,
of these children,
mm.
and schools? How has this relationship developed into such a delicate dynamic? Because I think you would find that today's teachers sometimes feel a bit lost compared to perhaps how they felt in the past.
Yeah. So, in my previous role, prior to starting to do more work with Europass, I was the head of primary at an amazing bilingual school here in Frankfurt, in Germany. And I've been privileged to work with incredible parents, really, really incredible parents who are incredibly supportive, who give 100% to their child and support the school so much. But as in any school, we have to be realistic, and we work with parents who have such a range of competing demands on their plate. And always, 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 the child is 100% at the center of everything they do and everything that they are working towards. But what that looks like in terms of the relationship with the school, well, that can
Mm.
sometimes be a little bit different.
Yes.
That
It's like it's even though we know here that we all want the same thing. Well, I shouldn't say that. We would like for the children to grow,
Yeah,
to have a sense of community, to have this new community outside of their primary community at home. But how we get there can look very different. Yes. And so, okay, you mentioned Frankfurt, and then
mm,
I had mentioned before also your experience in South Africa. You had mentioned your experiences in Adelaide. That's you are spanning the globe and dealing with parents from different cultures. And I was wondering if you noticed, both in your direct experience and then also in working with teachers at Europass, what seems to be some of the common denominators
yeah.
in the evolution of this relationship?
Really great question. So last week I was in Athens facilitating this course on parent-teacher collaboration, and this question came up. and we were talking about it at length. And it was such an eye-opener for the course participants, because we had a group from Romania and a couple from Cyprus as well. And I think there was this initial impression amongst the two groups, shall we say, that their problems were so unique to them, and they were saying, Nick, we have these issues that we're facing. We're not sure how to deal with them. And so the invitation was there. Let's just talk about this. Let's hear what each other has to say. Let's listen to each other's problems. And of course, what was the outcome? Everyone was saying, oh my gosh, the challenges that we face on this topic are exactly the same.
Yes.
Nuanced to our context, obviously, like there are some things which are very specific to our context, but so much of the challenges that we face are the same, but also, and importantly, what the parents want for their child is also the same.
And can
They
you
were
tell us
left with
more?
this,
Nice.
they were left with this really strong feeling of universalness. I'm losing my English. I have been in Europe too long.
I know all about that. Just ask my family.
We were really left with that idea. And so what came up? Well, firstly, that parents want the best for their child. That's so clear. Parents want the best for their child. Parents want their children to be happy. They want them to be able to succeed academically, mostly. That's a priority that comes up. That many of them are potentially a little bit unsure of exactly the right way to support their child in this very complex world that we are in right now. The intention is there. They want to know, but sometimes not everyone is certain of the right way forward. And so this desire to kind of like seek support and ask advice and get an opinion from someone who's able to perhaps share ideas of how to support them. These were the things that were
Yes.
universal.
I was thinking about the use of the word. They want the best for their child.
Yeah.
And even just saying, what does that mean? What does
Well,
that
that looks
look
different
like?
in different contexts. Yeah. That looks very different in different contexts.
Absolutely. And then I sometimes I think about even just some very basic things about child raising at this moment. I've seen this beautiful picture. I sometimes use it in my courses of there's a parent holding an infant. Okay. So if you can imagine just holding this infant and they're looking at each other and there's just this gaze.
Connection. Mm.
Yes, and they're looking at each other, and you realize like that this, along with physical touch, along with
Mm.
hearing first the heartbeat, hearing voices, but this gaze that really helps an infant realize that they exist.
Mm.
And you really wonder how much instead of this is this
Mm.
while the baby is cooing and I think a lot about that in also that it can be pretty complicated for parents, that there's a mix of feelings and letting your child then go into school and maybe a little bit of have I am I doing enough, am I
Am I doing
present
the
enough?
right thing? Yeah.
Yes.
100%. 100%. These are the concerns that parents feel all around the world. And hey, I do want to put my hand up and say, I don't have children myself. Okay, so that's a big clanger, big spoiler alert. I don't have children myself, but I've spent a career working with children and working with families. And I'm always trying to come from a place of empathy, trying to
Yeah.
build relationships, trying to build connections. And if I don't know what the experience is like, then having the courage to ask as well, and actually
Absolutely.
find out, so what is this like for you? Tell me what matters to you. Yeah,
And this is a question that you've asked the parents and you have
absolutely.
asked your teachers.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, in some slightly more hostile situations, people
Yes.
have come at me and said, well, you don't have children, you can't possibly understand. And I'm sure that there are teachers listening to this who are younger, maybe do not have children yet, or don't wish to have children for whatever reason. And if you are ever met with that accusation, which I've heard more than once,
Mhm.
a really good way to come back at that is to say, well, no, I don't. And you could either say I wouldn't say it's not relevant to this conversation, because actually it is.
Uh,
But you can definitely say, no, I don't, but I do want to hear what it's like for you. I want to hold
yes,
space for you to tell me what matters to you, because then I
that's
can
right.
use my professional skills and my understanding of the needs of children and learn from your experience within your family context and help to find a solution for you. Um,
And
a very powerful way.
I hear all of the humility, the professionalism, and the willingness to connect
Yeah.
in just that simple question. Tell me what it's like for you.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I have been on both sides of the equation. I might even
Mm.
say I've been on it's been a triangle actually.
Hmm.
I've been a parent, and I obviously have been a teacher for many, many years.
Hmm.
And then I also went through many years where I was also doing some tutoring, some private
Hmm.
tutoring at home. And that was also, that was another way of hearing about this relationship because I would have young people here and
Mm.
they would talk to me about how they felt in
Mm.
this dynamic between
Mm.
the parent who didn't really seem to trust the teacher and the
Mm.
teacher who would even maybe even say things in the classroom like, listen, and when your parents ask, or if your parents have a problem with it, they can come and talk to me, because that actually happens.
Yeah.
Or where the teacher is really dancing as fast as they can, trying to make sure that they are maybe trying to make as many people happy as possible, but we know that that's impossible. And I have found that with parents who have come in with a bit of that they're looking for an argument. Okay, there's
Mm.
something that they're upset about,
Hmm.
or you can just feel that there is a bit of let's say there's some mistrust. And
Mm.
like you said, just starting off the conversation with, tell me first off, before we start talking, tell me, how is your child?
Yeah.
What are you noticing?
Really great strategy. Really great strategy. But maybe just hearing you say that, maybe we should actually frame. I feel like we need to clarify something here. Everyone out there listening, teachers listening, most parents in your school community just want to see you and their child do well and thrive. And they are there to support you. They are an incredible asset, a very rich
Mhm.
asset that you can use to enhance your teaching, enhance your classroom practice, and to bring more diversity and excitement into your school. Having an active and supportive parent community is by far and large the majority of experiences that people will have working with parents. But I would say, Susan, that right now, this conversation that we're kind of almost like circling about at the moment is talking about the 1%. We're talking about that moment when things get really tough and really spicy. Yeah. That's, that's what we're kind of talking about. We're talking about
Exactly.
the helicopter parent or the lawnmower parent. Have you heard those two terms? The helicopter parent, the lawnmower parent,
I have heard also about the snowplow parent, but the
the snowplow parent,
lawnmower parent. Tell me
the
about the
lawnmower.
lawnmower parent.
They just cut it all down. They just like go straight over the top and go.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you're while you are correct that that is a low percentage, but they can really take up a lot of your time. They can take a lot
And they
of
can
space in
take
your
up
head.
all of the oxygen in the room. They can divert your attention. They can derail that meeting. They can upset your day. They can have such a big impact on your well-being as a teacher. I mean,
Mhm.
of think of that email you get and it came through at 4 a.m. and it's sitting in your inbox and it is just it's a it's a fight waiting to happen. You know, think of that person who's like, "Oh, I'm just going to see you at the school gate after school," and then, has something to say to you. These are the moments where as teachers, unless we've had a lot of experience working in the classroom and feel very comfortable to deal with this, who trains us to deal with these situations?
No one.
No
No
one.
one.
No one.
No.
This is not in teacher training 101.
No.
This is not a course to take. Community management, interpersonal relationship building between families and the school. This doesn't exist. I
No.
think of those graduate teachers who are experiencing the weight of demands from parents for the first time. Those parents who are insistent that the child gets good grades, that their child is not sitting next to that child, that their child is never wrong. They couldn't possibly have done that. Not at all. No, never. Not my child. Or it is your fault that this is
I'm
happening.
starting to
Fix
break
it.
out in hives. Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely. And
we have
eh,
this sort of generation of teachers new to the workforce, so to say, who don't necessarily have the wisdom or the skill set just yet. They haven't had the time in the
yes.
in the space yet to be able to navigate that. And we wonder why there's such a high attrition rate in this industry. And I'm not saying this is the reason. There are so many reasons why it's challenging for teachers, but it doesn't help when you have got a bunch of nasty emails in your inbox and you don't know where to start.
That's
That is
right.
tough.
Because you feel very alone, and you can
You feel
feel some
alone
about this.
and you feel responsible too because you have this professional duty to the child. So you feel alone and responsible. It's a tough place to be.
Yes. And what I found so interesting in looking at your bio, and looking at the course description that you
Hmm.
of the course that you co-designed for Europass was in talking about a model
Hmm.
that you have found to be
Yes.
worthwhile in your
Yeah.
experience in school leadership. And I understand that it's called the ABC Trust Model.
Hmm.
And I was very interested in this also because, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's connected to some aspects of positive psychology,
Hmm.
and which is something that we talk about a lot in our courses. And so I would love to know more about that.
Sure. Okay. So the ABCD trust model is not something that is specifically to do with schools or working with parents. Want to put that out there right now. But I
Yeah.
think that when you look at it, it it links so nicely to this kind of work, and it provides us with a little bit of a framework that we can view our interactions between parents and the school. And the first thing I would say is I would invite us as teachers who maybe have this mindset that we have this team here called Team School, and that we have this team over there called Team Parent. And for some reason, we're kind of on slightly opposing teams. And it's a sort of us against them vibe. And our job as teachers is to somehow, I don't know, win against them or score a point or something. I want to invite us now to move beyond that. We need to move beyond this idea that it's us against them, and it's actually about creating this idea of family engagement.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, I know the course is called Parent Teacher Collaboration, but actually what we're doing is trying to promote family engagement, bringing the family in. And so what I've found is that this is a really great model to reflect on your own practices, but also what practices does your school have that support you, the teacher?
Mm.
So we've been talking about this ABCD trust model. What is it? Let's unpack it a little bit. A is for ability, basically, how well can you do your job? B is for believability. Do you do what you say you're going to do? C is for connection. How do you
Mm.
create that sense of connection between the home and the school? And dependability. Can we rely on you to do this? Do you follow
Mm.
through? So, yeah, big words: ability,
Yes.
believability, connection, and dependability. They are like big words that sit out there. But it's so important to actually start to unpack those words from the perspective of the class teacher and
Yes.
from the perspective of the school.
Yes. This idea that even ability, you're talking about what's your skill set, your knowledge,
Exactly. Yeah. So what we're
your
trying to
expertise.
do, yeah, exactly. So what we're trying to do is with this model, we're trying to create a sense of trust because schools are really built on trust. The child is the most precious thing in the parent's life, and we are daily entrusted with their child. So we want to build this sense of trust. And so in order to build trust, we need to show that we're competent. We can do what we say we're going to do. We have the qualifications. And for the vast majority of teachers out there, that's not a problem. You show that you're competent and qualified to do this every day. That's not a problem. Believability. Yeah, well, this is the thing. Will you do what you say you're going to do? Because sometimes we come from a place of very good intentions,
Mm.
but we're very, very, very busy people, and things fall through the cracks. Um,
Yes.
and so
Can
as
you give
soon
an
as you,
example? Are you thinking of an
oh yeah,
example?
like I'm just like sometimes I used to say to my team, when you have a meeting with a parent, I've got to say this right because sometimes I get it around the wrong way. When you have a meeting with a parent, under promise and over deliver. Right.
So that would sound like, what
So
would
that
that
would
sound?
sound like being realistic with what you
Okay.
promise. Don't come in and say, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and this, and then only do two of those things.
Okay.
Yeah. Because,
So
we
yes.
want to brainstorm a million different solutions to this problem. We really do. And all the things that you're going to do to make this problem right. And then you don't because either it's not possible or you forget, you know.
Mm,
And then what sort of impression does that leave on the family? You know,
right.
you didn't follow through. Yeah.
Okay.
You're not
I like
believable
that. So it's to under promise and over
and
deliver.
over deliver.
So
So do
don't
that.
reveal all of your great
Yeah.
ideas and say, this year we're planning on taking these kinds of excursions and we're going to, or in the case with the individual child, um, yes, that you
Be
need to be quite.
realistic. I think parents at the end of the day want just a realistic assessment of what's going on. Sometimes that's really hard. That's the hardest thing to say, the realistic thing. But at the end of the day, it's about being realistic to create that sense of believability. Yeah,
And then we've
and
got
then
connection.
and then connection. And that's all, with the heart. That's how are we creating a space for every family to feel like they belong in your school? Is every family seen and heard? What does that look like in your school? Especially when you have families or school populations from very diverse communities. That becomes an even bigger imperative. How are you creating this sense of connection between the home and the school in a very intentional way? Like, what sorts of initiatives do you have? Do you have um, parent representative councils where they can have their voice heard? Do you have special events where parents are able to come in and perhaps share their expertise about certain things? Do you have, and I'm thinking of a lovely example from the school I worked in, do you have um, a reading breakfast? This is what we had. The parents loved it. A reading breakfast where it was such a cool thing. We would have it once every term, and the parents would pack a picnic basket and bring a picnic blanket, and they would borrow books from the library and then sit down outside on the school in the grassy area, and the children would come along and bring their friends, and then their parents would read to them some of the books that we had in our library. And it created that sense of community and connection. I'm thinking
Mhm.
another example from the school I just worked at. We had our parent social committee, who they weren't this representative council. They did separate work, but the social committee said, no, 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 we want to be the heart of the school. We want to bring events alive, like Halloween, if that's something that you do. We want to put on special days for the children. We want to organize our street festival, which we did every year. We want to do things that intentionally bring our community closer and provide that sense of belonging. And we know that when we feel like we belong to something in an authentic way, where it's far more likely to be an enriching and trustful experience for us. So how
There's
do we create that sense of connection in our schools?
And in this example that you just gave, I was thinking about how what I like the fact that you're also talking about parents using their strengths. We talk a lot
Yes.
about students using their strengths, and
Yes.
in
Yes.
positive
Yes.
psychology, that connection with character strengths, which
Yes.
we talk about a lot in our courses. So things like about being compassionate, or about creativity, or about being
Yes.
a very reliable person. And
Yes.
here you're offering, because the parents who often are attracted to these positions of leadership, sometimes they are very good accountants. Maybe
Yeah.
they are people that are very familiar with the laws, but they're
Yeah.
not really the person that's going to come in and put together a great street festival, because they are not necessarily, that's not really where their talents lie.
No.
And so I like that idea. And then I was also thinking about the fact that in these events, there are so many opportunities for those kind of loose ties, communications between
Mhm.
school staff and
Yes.
families
Yes. Yeah. Those
that are
informal
really the,
moments. Yeah.
it's the foundation then of seeing, I always say it's like seeing people in a different habitat, and
Mhm.
seeing how they interact with the children, all of them. And
Yes.
many times it was actually in, I don't know, being at the buffet that the school puts together, or just in these informal moments where I actually understood a lot more, even about the child, just kind of seeing the interaction. I really enjoy that. And then we have dependability.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a little. It's a little easier and quite succinctly summed up as just being consistent. Again, it is coming back to that idea of doing what you say you're going to do, but just being consistent over time, being dependable, being someone that the family can rely on. And you've got to think about how you show that, not only as a individual teacher, but how does your school show that they are an institution that you can be relied on. Um,
Mm.
I think it's a really important thing to consider. And this is something that a teacher can reflect on individually, like actually just reflecting on these sort of questions in this model and asking yourself, how do I do this? How do I do this? And then if you can, and you are brave enough, or you have a leadership team that's willing enough, sitting with this and asking the same thing as a school, because actually that matters more. And maybe this gets on to our next topic, but if you are able to answer that framework as a school, it will be much easier for you to answer that as an individual teacher, because you will have a
Right.
supportive framework already put in place. You won't have to be doing the heavy lifting. Even still, I would
Yeah.
say it is a good idea to actually reflect on that as a teacher and ask yourself, how am I showing these things? How am I doing that myself? What do I believe? What's important to me? But actually, having a school that has done the thinking about that, that's where you start to feel more supported as a teacher.
Also, because that's where you will have certain, just like a certain guidelines in place. And you're right,
Yeah.
that does it gets into that whole conversation. And I wanted to ask you about boundaries, about
Boundaries.
best practices, about
Yeah.
boundaries, because okay, there, as you were talking about the ABCD model, trust
Mm.
model, I was thinking about, first of all, that how much more meaningful does our work become to us in thinking about, of course, what we're teaching, but also through this lens of relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm thinking about the teachers that would look at me and say, uh-huh, yeah, and I do all that work.
Mm.
And what about, the parents that just won't be engaged, or they won't, or
Mm.
they're over engaged, or in some way
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
Mm.
I can do my
Mm-hmm.
part, but what about the parents' part? And so I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking about boundaries, and I
Yeah.
think you and I both understand, when we're talking about boundaries, we're not talking about a wall.
Mm-mm. No, we are
Mm,
not. No, we are not talking about a wall. Boundaries. Yeah, this was a really big topic last week.
yes.
And I got schooled on something that I did not realize. I have to put my hand up and say I was a little naive going into this particular situation, because I assumed that WhatsApp as a platform was not something that would ever be used within a school community to contact the teachers. And then when this group of teachers told me that it's the primary form of communication between the family and the teacher, and that it is literally causing them to have meltdowns, I
Yes.
was floored.
Shocked.
I was really shocked. And
Yeah.
I had so many questions around that.
Hmm.
But the first thing I had to do was accept that this was the norm in this community. At the moment, this was the norm. But
Yes.
I did challenge them to think about why this is the norm. And bigger than that, who let it become the norm? And are we okay with it remaining the norm? And if
Yes.
we're not, what can we do about it? And I was really touched by an example that one of the participants gave, when she said, "I was on my summer holiday and I was at the beach in a totally different country, trying to enjoy myself, and I got a call from a mother who then kept me talking on WhatsApp for an hour." And I said to her, "This has to stop.
Yes.
You are not this parent's life concierge. They do not have the right to have access to you outside of school hours. And then when it is in school hours, the way that they have access to you has to be very clearly defined,
Hmm.
because you should not be freely available at the whim of someone to just talk to you. Would we do that to anyone in any other industry? Would we treat anyone else like that? No.
No.
No, I'm sorry, we would never do that. Would you just walk into, I don't know, a bank and
No.
would you get the phone number of the person from the personal mobile number of
Yes.
your account manager at a bank and then call them on a Sunday morning because you wanted to chat about your home loan?
And
No.
this is closely connected to teacher well-being, because this is how we lose some of our best teachers. People
Yes.
who go into this profession with
Yes.
all heart, and
Yes.
they have not thought about the fact that it's not necessary, they are not responsible for all of this, that
No.
they see themselves as very central, and but not in a selfish way. It's that
No. No.
there is a belief behind what they're doing, that I must save them, or I
Yeah.
need to be available in order to make sure to facilitate this child's life. And so the boundary
Mm.
is even in realizing, like, for example, I think you find that this is very cultural, that in some cultures, because the schools don't have the designated institutional email,
Mm.
okay,
Hmm.
everyone's just using their Gmail accounts.
Hmm.
And instead of saying, that a school would be able to make the investment to say, okay, we
Yeah.
are all locked into this system, and then
No.
encouraging the teachers to say, we are going, that we're going to have a school-wide
Mm.
policy.
Hmm. Okay. That right there. So, so dear teachers, that are listening out there,
Let
you
them
know,
have it, Nick.
yeah,
Tell
like
them.
if tell them, you know, you've just hit the nail on the head. Look, I don't want to say that we should all have uh, either school email and only be accessible via that, and I don't want to say that a school needs to invest in some fancy app platform where that is the way that families can communicate. I'm not saying that at all, but what I am saying is that your school has the duty to be able to actually provide you with a framework around what good home school, for a moment pretending they are two different camps, what good homeschool communication looks like in your school. What is acceptable in our school? How do we use devices? When is the teacher contactable? What is the length of time that you can expect a response in? What is the tone we use with each other? How do we document these meetings? Where is this information available? It goes on and on and on. But this is the duty of the school, to actually create these boundaries. And if you're working at a school where this does not yet exist, this feels like a fabulous moment to
Mm,
actually affect some positive change, to be
yes.
courageous and have a conversation with the people who need to hear this and ask the question from a place of curiosity, and also from a place that will only strengthen and support the school as a whole. What is our stance on this? And if we can't articulate it, it's potentially time to have that
That's right.
conversation.
That's right, because I have a lot of teachers who have this problem with their school leadership, meaning that the school leadership is it's the first aspect of the school community that has difficulty with boundaries, that is sending emails until late at night, that
Mm,
expects things immediately.
mm,
And it can be, I think that I really want for any teachers that are listening to us to realize that while you are waiting to make a more systemic change, it is
mm.
possible for the individual teacher to reflect very deeply on what is possible for them, what is
Yes,
not possible, and
yes,
knowing that those boundaries will probably even change a little bit
yeah,
over time,
yeah.
but that you make a decision going into the new school year about what is possible for me. And I like the idea also of under promising. Maybe it's better to be,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
I
to
really
be
like
very
what you
aware of
say
that.
there about the idea of taking the time to reflect on what your professional boundaries actually are. Because there's another thing we don't really do in our teacher training. No one invites us to sit for a moment and reflect on the question, Well, what are
Mm,
my professional boundaries around communication with
mm,
parents, with my colleagues, even? What's in and what's out for me?
yes.
What are the things what are my red lines? And
Mhm,
I would actually invite the teachers that are listening to reflect on that. What is important to you? Are you okay with answering? Are you okay with answering a WhatsApp message from a colleague about a work question after school hours?
mhm,
Are you or not?
mhm,
Think
mhm,
about it. Does it depend on the colleague? Don't know. You know, are
mhm,
you comfortable with sharing your personal mobile number with a parent?
mhm.
Yes or no? If yes, what does that mean? If yes, does that come with any caveats where you say to them, you may contact me between these specific hours? If not, I will not answer. It is up to you. You need to find what works for you. But this comes back to the ABCD trust model. This is that kind of like dependability and believability bit. You've got to do what you say you're going to do. You've got to be consistent about this, because where there's a break in it is where people will dive
That's
through. So I
that's
do
right.
encourage people to actually reflect and think, what are my professional boundaries around this?
Also, because in what happens when we're clear about those boundaries, we can communicate them with our whole heart, and we can
Yes,
carry out what we say we're going to
yes,
do with our
yes,
whole heart. And this
yes.
is what parents often also struggle a lot with boundaries. They struggle a lot with boundaries with their work life, with their
Mm,
kids. And when they find us as being, let's say, reassuringly boundaried, meaning that things are
mm.
clear, this is the structure of how things will work. And it within that structure, within that container, I am here for you.
There's a lot of comfort to be derived from putting those boundary fences up, stating them clearly, sharing them with people, because then we know.
Yes.
We
Yes.
know. There's comfort in knowing. We
Yes.
know what to expect. There's going to be
Right.
no surprises here.
And the ones that like to come and knock on your wall when they're not supposed to, and they
Mm,
will, and them finding, you saying, I'll be happy to answer that tomorrow. And
yes.
just, it's not personal, and it's not, they
No.
might,
No.
push on it, just like some
Yeah.
of the kids in our classroom push on the boundary.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we have all different personalities that we're dealing with. It's not personal. It's not because they think you're
It is
weak,
not
or
personal.
because you don't have children you don't understand, or
No.
you're a new teacher, or you're an old teacher. It is that the way this person probably, either they have never found that boundary in a school situation, or they try to find a way around it, but it's okay. It's the boundary. It's not
Yeah.
a thing between you and me. And
No.
Nick, I think this is super super useful. We could do a whole conversation just about this. And but I would like to know, is there
Mm,
something that you would like, even just some practical tips that you think that the teachers could even use tomorrow? In
mm.
helping foster more of that
Yes.
parental engagement, that family.
Yes. Yeah. Ah, I want this to be practical, and I think when people hear me say it, they're going to roll their eyes and go, "Oh, Nick." But but go with it for a moment. Let's pretend. Um, Entertain me. I want, if there's one thing that I could say to teachers listening, I would say to them, you need to come from a place of empathy, because you do not know what is happening in that family's life in the here and now. You have no idea, right? You might know what is happening in their child's life at school, but you do not know what is happening in their family, in their community. There are
Mhm.
things going on that you might not be able to fathom. And so, because of that, it is your duty to come from a place of gentle, practicing, compassionate empathy, and to sit across from them as a human. And I said this at the very beginning, tell me what matters to you right now.
Mhm.
Tell me what is important to you right now. Tell me about how your child is feeling. What are you noticing at home?
Yes.
What is worrying for you right now?
Mhm.
And then the next thing, acknowledge whatever that is and say to them, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that information with me. Really, really validate their experience. So we're talking
Yes.
about active listening here, but it sort
Yes.
of goes a little beyond that. But it's so important to say, I really appreciate that you shared that information with me. That's so important to know. And again, take note of that, teacher. Don't just say it and then, because you're going to get given some really important pieces of information in a conversation like that.
Yes.
And then, if there's a problem here, invite them to suggest what have you thought of any solutions to this? What solutions do you bring to the table? And now, for some families, they'll be like, no, we have none. You're the professional. You sort it out. Fine. Some families might say something where you go, oh, no, we're not going to do that. and some might come up with some genuinely useful ideas. And for the ones where the ideas are a little not within what you think is possible, that doesn't matter. You acknowledge the fact, thank you for sharing that with me. Look, in my professional opinion, I feel like that might not be a viable way to go with this, or perhaps we could take just a piece of that idea and
Mhm.
change it a little because I see X, Y, or Z. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's
Yes.
still about giving them space to be able to share, and also encourage them to be a part of the solution. Don't create
Mm.
this cycle of learned helplessness where they're coming to you like, say, solve the problem, solve the problem. How would you approach this problem? And then, well,
Oh,
here's how I would approach the problem as a as the professional in the room in this particular situation. But this has got to be a participatory experience. If you're going to get families on side, it's got to be about creating buy-in and trust and making sure that this feels like a participatory experience.
yes. And you know what I love so much about this, what you're saying, Nick, is that you are talking about a way of being. It's not just about a strategy that you use or a tip
Mm.
that you, this is about a way of being. And this works in all relationships. And so
Mm.
what's happening is this is you are really helping the teachers who are listening to reflect upon how easy or difficult it is for them to actually do that. Even the ones when you were saying they might be scoffing at that, ha, okay,
Mm.
but okay, let's just sort of crack a window open, even if this
Mm.
seems preposterous, right? But what would happen if?
Mm.
What could happen
And
if you tried that?
you have to come from a place of vulnerability as well. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown and the work and the research that she does into vulnerability and
Yeah,
courage
yeah.
and shame. Fascinating, but especially when it comes to vulnerability, because you have to, and this is hard for some teachers, you have to actually, while being in control of that situation, you also simultaneously have to say, well, I don't necessarily have all the answers here. And I don't, because I can't know everything about your family. I don't even, I should not dare as the teacher to assume I know everything about what's going on here. So let me be vulnerable enough to say, I'm open to learning about how you might approach this, if you've thought of any ideas, and to give me your perspective on this.
And in the cultures that tend to be a bit more hierarchical,
Mm.
because we are obviously we're working with cultures that are coming from a more of an egalitarian background,
Mm.
and the ones that are more hierarchical, where the
Mm.
teacher really has a certain type of societal pressure to
Yep.
be the
Yep.
expert. Okay,
Yep.
something that I have often encouraged teachers to do is, even if you can't quite be vulnerable, you
Mm.
can acknowledge the parent's expertise in their own home
Yes.
by
Yes.
saying, you are the expert of your reality at home.
Yes.
I am the expert on what happens in my classroom. So let's
Yes.
talk about these realities that we both
Yeah.
inhabit and
Yeah.
see what we can put together.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that for a lot of teachers feels safer, but at the same time, you are absolutely being 100% respectful towards
Yeah.
yourself and towards the parent that you have in front of you.
Yeah.
Nick, where can people get in touch with you? This has been such an interesting conversation, and I feel like we have barely scratched the surface of all of the
We have
things that you
barely
can share
scratched
with
the
us.
surface. There's so much more to
Yes.
talk about. Look, I would say, number one, if you are interested in exploring this topic more, Europass has an amazing course on this very topic, which was co-authored by myself and Peter, and we love delivering it, and we would love many people to sign up and take part of it. Maybe
And
we'll be
remind us the
training,
name of
maybe
the
not.
course. Can you
Um,
remind us?
I, I I struggle
I
with
will tell
remembering it.
you.
It's parent-teacher collaboration, building bridge.
Building bridges. That's
Yes,
right.
building bridges.
And that's where, and people generally find you at the Copenhagen branch of
Yeah,
Europass, but
yeah.
you do travel.
I do travel. Athens last week, and I'll be in
Mhm.
Copenhagen for the course that is scheduled on the 27th of January. If you
January.
are interested, I will be facilitating that one along
Excellent.
with Peter. But in the meantime, my website is actually right there on the screen, and you can go there, and I have a bunch of other tips and resources available that you can read and download or get in touch with me if you want. I love to hear from teachers from all over the world.
Fantastic. And of course, and then also on your website, I saw there was different ways to connect with you on social
Yeah.
media. I see that you're quite active on LinkedIn, and
Yes.
also very open to people. And that's something that I really appreciate about you, Nick. In addition to all of this care that you put into making the children of today just have the best reality they can. And I'm really happy that you're with us. And for all of you who have been watching us, thank you for being here. Remember to click that subscribe button for whenever these talks come up. And I think we're going to have to invite you back, Nick. There's
That'd be
so many
great.
other things to talk about. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for listening.